The elevator doors opened on the 42nd floor of the Meridian Tower in downtown Seattle, and I wheeled myself into what would become the most satisfying boardroom meeting of my life. Around that polished mahogany table sat 12 executives who had once laughed at my ideas, dismissed my proposals, and treated me like I was invisible. Now they needed me more than they'd ever admit. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. My name is Sarah Chen, and this is the story of how the same people who mocked my cerebral palsy ended up begging me to save their careers. 3 years earlier, I was a software engineer at Morrison Industries, a manufacturing company that had been stuck in the technological Stone Age for decades. While other companies embraced automation and digital transformation, Morrison still relied on paper filing systems, manual inventory tracking, and processes that belonged in the 1980s. I had joined Morrison fresh out of Stanford, with a master's degree in computer science and a head full of ideas about how technology could revolutionize traditional industries. What I didn't expect was to become the office pariah, simply because I used a wheelchair. My cerebral palsy affects my motor skills and speech patterns, but my mind works perfectly fine. In fact, I'd argue it works better than most. I see patterns where others see chaos, solutions where others see problems, and opportunities where others see obstacles. But at Morrison, all anyone seemed to notice was my disability. The morning that changed everything started like any other. I arrived at the office early, as I always did, to avoid the rush hour elevator crowds. The building's accessibility features were minimal at best, and I'd learned to navigate around the barriers that others took for granted. I wheeled into the break room to get my usual cup of coffee, where I found 3 of my colleagues huddled around the counter: Derek Martinez from sales, Lisa Thompson from marketing, and Brad Williams from operations. They were discussing the company's latest crisis, a major client threatening to pull their contract due to our outdated systems. "Morning, guys," I said, maneuvering my wheelchair closer to the coffee machine. Derek glanced over his shoulder with barely concealed annoyance. "Oh, hey Sarah, didn't see you there." It was the same dismissive tone he'd used with me for months. Derek was one of those people who spoke louder and slower whenever he addressed me, as if my physical disability somehow affected my hearing or intelligence. Lisa continued their conversation without acknowledging me. The Peterson Group is serious about pulling out. They need real-time inventory tracking, automated reporting, and digital integration with their systems. We're talking about losing a $12 million contract. I cleared my throat. Actually, I've been working on some solutions that could address exactly those issues. I've developed a prototype system that could integrate with our existing infrastructure and provide all the functionality Peterson Group is looking for. The 3 of them turned to stare at me with expressions ranging from skepticism to outright amusement. Credote. Brad let out a short laugh. "No offense, Sarah, but this isn't really your department. We're talking about a major system overhaul, not fixing someone's computer password." The condescension in his voice made my jaw clench, but I kept my composure. "I understand this is complex, but I've actually been studying our system's architecture for months. I've identified 17 critical inefficiencies that could be addressed with relatively simple software solutions." Derek shook his head with a patronizing smile. "Look, Sarah, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but we need real solutions from experienced professionals. Maybe you could help with data entry or something more suitable." The word "suitable" hung in the air like a slap. More suitable for someone like me, he meant. Someone who couldn't be trusted with important work. Lisa grabbed her coffee and started walking toward the door. "We should probably get back to figuring out actual solutions. The executive meeting is in 2 hours. They left me alone in the break room, their laughter echoing down the hallway as they walked away. I sat there for a moment, staring at my reflection in the coffee machine's chrome surface. This wasn't the first time I'd been dismissed, and I knew it wouldn't be the last. But something about that morning felt different. Maybe it was the casual cruelty in their voices, or maybe I'd finally reached my breaking point. I wheeled back to my cubicle and opened the folder on my computer labeled Morrison Integration Project. For 6 months, I'd been working on this system in my spare time, using my own resources and staying late after everyone else had gone home. What started as an intellectual exercise had evolved into a comprehensive solution that could transform Morrison's entire operation. The system I'd developed wasn't just about inventory tracking or automated reporting. It was a complete digital ecosystem that would integrate every aspect of Morrison's business operations: purchase orders, supply chain management, quality control, customer relations, financial reporting, everything connected in real time through an intuitive interface that could be customized for different departments and user skill levels. I'd built it using cutting-edge machine learning algorithms that could predict inventory needs, identify potential supply chain disruptions, and optimize manufacturing schedules based on historical data and market trends. The system could reduce overhead costs by 30% while improving efficiency by over 40%. But nobody at Morrison knew about it because nobody had bothered to ask what I was capable of. Around 10 o'clock, I noticed unusual activity in the executive wing. People were rushing back and forth, phones were ringing constantly, and there was a general sense of panic in the air. Through the office grapevine, I learned that Peterson Group had moved up their deadline. Instead of giving Morrison 2 weeks to present a solution, they wanted a comprehensive proposal by the end of the week. The emergency meeting that afternoon was held in the main conference room, and while I wasn't officially invited, I positioned myself at my cubicle where I could overhear the discussion through the thin walls. President Richard Hawthorne's voice carried clearly through the room. "This is a disaster. Peterson Group represents 20% of our annual revenue. If we lose this contract, we'll have to lay off at least 60 employees by Christmas." Jennifer Walsh from the IT department spoke next. "We've contacted 3 different consulting firms, but none of them can deliver a working system in 5 days. The fastest timeline we've been quoted is 8 weeks, assuming everything goes perfectly." "What about internal solutions?" asked Margaret Foster, the head of human resources. "Do we have anyone on staff who could handle this?" There was a long pause before Derek's voice came through the wall. "Our IT team is competent for basic maintenance, but this requires enterprise-level systems architecture. We just don't have that expertise in-house." I almost laughed at the irony. Derek was literally sitting 20 feet away from exactly the expertise Morrison needed, but his prejudices had blinded him to the possibility. The meeting continued for another hour, with various executives proposing increasingly desperate solutions. Hire a consultant at triple rates with no guarantee of success. Partner with a competitor who might steal their client base. Even consider selling the Peterson Group contract to another company at a loss. By the time the meeting ended, it was clear that Morrison Industries was facing an existential crisis, and nobody had any viable solutions. That evening, I stayed late at the office to put the finishing touches on my system. I'd decided that morning in the break room that I was done being invisible. If Morrison wanted to ignore my capabilities, that was their choice. But I wasn't going to let 60 innocent employees lose their jobs because of management's narrow-mindedness. I spent the night creating a comprehensive presentation that demonstrated exactly what my system could do. I included side-by-side comparisons showing Morrison's current processes versus my automated solutions, cost-benefit analyses that broke down potential savings to the penny, and implementation timelines that could have the basic framework operational within 72 hours. The next morning, I requested a meeting with President Hawthorne. His assistant, a pleasant woman named Carol, initially tried to schedule me for the following month. "I'm sorry, Sarah, but Mr. Hawthorne is completely booked with the Peterson Group crisis. Perhaps I could schedule you with your direct supervisor instead?" "Carol, this meeting is about the Peterson Group crisis. I have a solution that could save the contract and potentially transform Morrison's entire operation." There must have been something in my voice that convinced her, because she put me on hold and came back 2 minutes later with a meeting slot for that afternoon. I spent the morning rehearsing my presentation and preparing for every possible objection. I knew I'd only get one chance to prove myself, and I couldn't afford any technical glitches or communication barriers. At 3 o'clock sharp, I wheeled into President Hawthorne's office. He was a distinguished man in his early 60s, with graying hair and the tired expression of someone carrying too much responsibility. He looked up from his desk with polite curiosity. Sarah, isn't it? Carol mentioned you have some ideas about our Peterson situation. Yes, sir. I've developed a comprehensive software solution that addresses every requirement Peterson Group has specified, plus several improvements they haven't thought to ask for yet. Hawthorne leaned back in his chair. I appreciate your initiative, but we've already explored internal options. Jennifer Walsh has been very clear that we don't have the in-house capability for this kind of project. With respect, sir, Jennifer Walsh doesn't know what I'm capable of because nobody has ever asked me to demonstrate my skills. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. Something in my tone must have caught his attention because he gestured for me to continue. I launched into my presentation, starting with Morrison's current challenges and moving systematically through each component of my proposed solution. I showed him real-time demonstrations of the system, working with simulated data, walked him through the user interface from different departmental perspectives, and provided detailed technical specifications that proved the system's scalability and security. 20 minutes into the presentation, Hawthorne stopped taking notes and started asking increasingly detailed questions. 40 minutes in, he called Jennifer Walsh to join the meeting. An hour later, the conference room was full of executives, all staring at my laptop screen in stunned silence. This is remarkable work, Jennifer finally said. The integration architecture alone would have taken our team months to design, and you've already got working code. Derek, who had been called in halfway through the presentation, looked like he'd swallowed something bitter. How long have you been working on this? 6 months in my spare time, I replied. Though I've been studying Morrison's systems and identifying optimization opportunities since I started here. Margaret Foster shook her head in amazement. Sarah, why didn't you bring this to our attention sooner? I looked around the room at all the faces staring at me with newfound respect and interest. These were the same people who had dismissed my ideas, patronized my contributions, and treated me like I was barely competent to handle basic tasks. Because every time I've tried to contribute to technical discussions, I've been told that my input wasn't needed, or that I should focus on work more suitable for someone like me. The room fell uncomfortably silent. Derek was staring at his shoes, and I could see Lisa shifting nervously in her chair. President Hawthorne cleared his throat. Sarah, what would you need to implement this system for Peterson Group by their deadline? Full administrative access to our servers, a dedicated team of 3 junior developers to handle routine coding tasks, and authority to make necessary infrastructure modifications. I can have the core system operational within 48 hours and fully deployed within a week. And the cost? Approximately $15,000 in software licenses and hardware upgrades. Everything else can be handled with existing resources. The number was so dramatically lower than any external solution they'd considered that several executives actually gasped. Hawthorne looked around the room at his senior staff. Any objections to moving forward with Sarah's proposal? Nobody spoke up, though I could practically feel Derek's reluctance radiating across the table. Excellent. Sarah, consider yourself the lead architect on this project, effective immediately. Jennifer, I want you to provide Sarah with whatever support she needs. Everyone else, I expect full cooperation with this initiative. As the meeting broke up, I felt a mixture of satisfaction and vindication that I'd never experienced before. After months of being treated as less capable, I was finally being recognized for what I could actually accomplish. But as I wheeled out of the conference room, I caught Derek muttering to Lisa, "Let's see if she can actually deliver on all these promises." The skepticism in his voice told me that winning this opportunity was only the beginning. Now I had to prove that I could execute under pressure, deliver results on an impossible timeline, and demonstrate that my disability had never been a limitation on my capabilities. Over the next 72 hours, I barely left the office. I worked 18-hour days, managing my small team of developers, coordinating with different departments, and personally handling the most complex aspects of the system integration. The junior developers initially seemed uncertain about taking direction from someone in a wheelchair, but their attitudes changed quickly once they saw the quality and sophistication of my code. By the second day, they were actively suggesting improvements and asking technical questions that showed they respected my expertise. The real test came when we demonstrated the system to Peterson Group's technical team via video conference. I'd prepared extensively for this moment, knowing that any technical glitches or communication problems would reflect poorly on Morrison's capabilities. The demonstration went flawlessly. The Peterson Group executives were impressed not just with the system's functionality but with its elegant design and intuitive interface. Their technical director, a woman named Dr. Amanda Rodriguez, asked several complex questions about scalability and security protocols that I answered without hesitation. "This is exactly what we've been looking for," Dr. Rodriguez said at the end of the call. "Morrison Industries has exceeded our expectations significantly. We're prepared to not only continue our existing contract but expand it to include 3 additional product lines." After the call ended, the Morrison conference room erupted in celebration. The contract expansion meant an additional $8 million in annual revenue and job security for everyone at the company. President Hawthorne stood up and addressed the room. "I think we all owe Sarah a significant debt of gratitude. Her innovation and dedication have not only saved this contract, but positioned Morrison Industries for substantial growth." The applause felt genuine, but I noticed that several of my colleagues were avoiding eye contact. Derek was clapping politely, but his expression suggested he was processing some uncomfortable realizations about his own behavior. That evening, as I was packing up my laptop, Lisa Thompson approached my desk. She looked embarrassed and uncertain, very different from her usual confident demeanor. "Sarah, I wanted to apologize for how I acted in the break room last week. I was dismissive and rude, and I'm sorry." "I appreciate the apology, Lisa. I guess I just never realized how capable you were. I mean, I knew you were smart, but this system you built is incredible." "My capabilities haven't changed, Lisa. They were always there. The difference is that now you're paying attention." She nodded slowly, seeming to understand the deeper meaning of my words. Over the following weeks, my role at Morrison Industries transformed completely. I was promoted to Director of Technology Innovation, given my own team, and tasked with identifying other areas where technology could improve the company's operations. But the most satisfying moment came a month later, when I received an email from Derek Martinez asking if I'd consider consulting on a project for one of his major clients. The same person who had suggested I stick to data entry was now seeking my expertise for his most important accounts. 6 months after the Peterson Group's success, I had settled into my new role as Director of Technology Innovation with a team of 8 developers under my supervision. Morrison Industries was thriving, having secured 4 additional major contracts based on the reputation of our technological capabilities. But success, I was learning, came with its own set of challenges. The morning everything changed started with an unexpected visitor. I was reviewing code specifications with my team when Carol from President Hawthorne's office appeared at my desk, looking unusually flustered. "Sarah, there's someone here to see you, a Mr. Nathan Brooks from TechVantage Solutions. He says it's urgent." TechVantage Solutions was one of the largest technology consulting firms on the West Coast, known for poaching talent from smaller companies and acquiring innovative technologies. I'd heard their name whispered in industry circles with a mixture of respect and wariness. Nathan Brooks turned out to be a polished man in his 40s, wearing an expensive suit and carrying himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to getting what he wanted. He had the kind of smile that never quite reached his eyes. "Miss Chen, I've been following your work at Morrison Industries with great interest. The Peterson Group implementation was particularly impressive." "Thank you. What can I do for you, Mr. Brooks?" He settled into the chair across from my desk without being invited. "I'll get straight to the point. TechVantage is expanding our Pacific Northwest operations, and we're looking for exceptional talent to lead our new innovation division. Your name came up repeatedly in our executive discussions. The offer he presented was staggering. Triple my current salary, stock options, a research budget of $2 million, and the resources of a major corporation behind my projects. It was the kind of opportunity that most people in my field would accept without hesitation. It's a generous offer, I said carefully, but I'm quite happy at Morrison. Brooks leaned forward, his expression becoming more intense. Sarah, with all due respect, you're wasting your talents at a mid-size manufacturing company. Morrison Industries is a nice place to cut your teeth, but TechVantage could give you a platform to change entire industries. There was something about his tone that rubbed me the wrong way. The same subtle condescension I'd heard so often before, disguised as professional courtesy. I appreciate the interest, but I'm not looking to make a change right now. His smile became strained. Perhaps you'd like some time to consider? I'll be in Seattle for the rest of the week. Why don't we schedule dinner tomorrow night to discuss the details? After he left, I found myself unsettled by the encounter. Something about Nathan Brooks felt predatory, like he was circling prey rather than making a legitimate job offer. That afternoon, I decided to do some research on TechVantage solutions. What I discovered made my blood run cold. TechVantage had a pattern of identifying innovative technologies at smaller companies, aggressively recruiting key personnel, and then using their insider knowledge to compete directly against their former employers. In 3 documented cases over the past 5 years, they had driven smaller companies out of business by undercutting their contracts and stealing their clients. Even more disturbing was their track record with disabled employees. A former TechVantage developer named Marcus Williams had filed a discrimination lawsuit 2 years earlier, claiming the company had hired him as part of a diversity initiative, but then systematically excluded him from important projects and eventually forced him out. The case had been settled out of court with a substantial non-disclosure agreement. I printed out everything I could find and took it to President Hawthorne's office. "Richard, I think we have a problem." I laid out my research on his desk, explaining the pattern I'd identified and my concerns about TechVantage's true motives. Hawthorne studied the documents with growing alarm. "You think they're trying to infiltrate Morrison to steal our technology? I think they want to neutralize our competitive advantage. If they can't buy our innovations, they'll try to cripple our ability to develop new ones. What do you recommend? We need to be very careful about how we handle this. If I reject their offer too directly, they might try other approaches. But we should also start preparing for the possibility that they'll attempt more aggressive tactics." Over the next few days, I played a careful game with Nathan Brooks. I attended the dinner meeting he'd requested, listened to his expanded offer, and asked thoughtful questions that made me seem genuinely interested while gathering intelligence about TechVantage's operations. During our conversation, Brooks revealed more than he probably intended. TechVantage had been tracking Morrison's success closely, and they were particularly interested in the proprietary algorithms I'd developed for predictive inventory management. "The manufacturing sector is ripe for disruption," he said over dessert. "A company with the right technology and resources could dominate that market within 5 years. And you think TechVantage could be that company? With the right team, absolutely. Someone with your insights into manufacturing inefficiencies could help us identify the most promising acquisition targets." The phrase acquisition targets confirmed my suspicions. TechVantage wasn't just interested in hiring me. They were planning a systematic assault on the manufacturing technology market. I excused myself early, claiming I needed to consider the offer carefully. But instead of going home, I drove back to Morrison's offices to begin implementing a plan I'd been developing since my first meeting with Brooks. If TechVantage wanted to play aggressive business tactics, I was going to show them what real strategic thinking looked like. Working through the night, I created a comprehensive analysis of TechVantage's business model, their client base, and their technological capabilities. What I discovered was that for all their reputation and resources, they were surprisingly vulnerable in several key areas. Their technology solutions were impressive but largely derivative, based on existing frameworks and industry-standard approaches. They succeeded primarily through superior marketing and aggressive business practices rather than genuine innovation. More importantly, their client retention rates were poor. Companies hired TechVantage for major projects, but rarely renewed their contracts for long-term relationships. Their approach was to extract maximum value quickly rather than building sustainable partnerships. I spent the weekend developing what I privately called Operation Shield Wall, a comprehensive strategy to protect Morrison Industries and potentially expose TechVantage's predatory practices. The first component was defensive. I worked with our legal team to file provisional patents on all of Morrison's proprietary technologies, ensuring that TechVantage couldn't simply reverse engineer our innovations. I also implemented additional security protocols for our development systems and created redundant backups of all critical code. But the second component was more ambitious. I had identified 3 companies that TechVantage had recently targeted: Regional Manufacturing Corp in Portland, Cascade Industries in Vancouver, and Pacific Solutions in San Francisco. All 3 were struggling with technology implementations that TechVantage had either abandoned or delivered poorly. I reached out to the CTO at Regional Manufacturing, a woman named Dr. Patricia Kim, who had been dealing with a failed automation system for 6 months. Dr. Kim, my name is Sarah Chen from Morrison Industries. I understand you've been having challenges with your recent technology implementation. That's putting it mildly, she replied with obvious frustration. TechVantage promised us a revolutionary solution, delivered something that barely functions, and then essentially disappeared once they collected their fees. What if I told you there might be a way to salvage your investment and actually get the system working properly? The conversation that followed was illuminating. TechVantage had charged Regional Manufacturing nearly $400,000 for a system that was fundamentally flawed in its basic architecture. But the core hardware was sound, and with proper software integration, it could be transformed into exactly what the company needed. I proposed a partnership arrangement. Morrison Industries would provide the technical expertise to fix Regional Manufacturing's system at cost, in exchange for a case study that documented the problems with TechVantage's original implementation. Dr. Kim was intrigued but cautious. Why would Morrison Industries want to help a potential competitor? Because TechVantage is targeting companies like both of ours. And the best defense against predatory business practices is cooperation among their intended victims. Over the following week, I made similar approaches to Cascade Industries and Pacific Solutions. Both companies had similar stories. TechVantage had overpromised, underdelivered, and left them with expensive systems that didn't meet their needs. The response was overwhelmingly positive. These companies were desperate for solutions, and the prospect of working with someone who actually understood their industries was appealing. But the real breakthrough came when I received a call from Marcus Williams, the former TechVantage employee who had filed the discrimination lawsuit. Ms. Chen, I heard through the industry grapevine that you might be interested in information about TechVantage's business practices. Marcus turned out to be a goldmine of insider knowledge. During his 18 months at TechVantage, he had documented extensive evidence of their unethical practices, including deliberate overbilling, intentional system failures designed to generate additional consulting fees, and systematic discrimination against employees with disabilities. They hired me as part of a federal diversity compliance requirement, Marcus explained during our meeting at a coffee shop in downtown Seattle. But from day one, they made it clear that I was just there for appearances. They gave me meaningless projects, excluded me from team meetings, and then blamed my, quote, performance issues when they wanted to get rid of me. Do you have documentation of this treatment? Marcus smiled grimly and pulled out a thick folder. I documented everything. Emails, meeting recordings, project assignments, performance reviews. My lawyer advised me to keep detailed records in case the settlement agreement was ever violated. The evidence Marcus provided was damning. Internal emails showed TechVantage executives discussing how to quote disabled employees while maintaining plausible deniability. Project files revealed systematic overcharging and corner-cutting that compromised system functionality. Most significantly, there were recorded conversations about targeting smaller companies for acquisition or elimination. Armed with this information, I began Phase 2 of Operation Shield Wall. I reached out to technology journalists at several major publications, providing them with carefully anonymized information about TechVantage's practices. I also connected the 3 companies I'd been helping with a law firm that specialized in corporate fraud cases. But the most satisfying part of my plan was personal. Nathan Brooks had been calling regularly, pressuring me for a decision on his job offer. Each conversation became more aggressive, with barely veiled threats about what would happen if Morrison Industries continued to compete in TechVantage's territory. Finally, I agreed to a meeting at TechVantage's Seattle offices to give him my answer. The TechVantage building was a gleaming tower in the downtown business district, all glass and steel and expensive art installations. Brooks met me in the lobby with his usual predatory smile, clearly confident that he was about to claim his prize. Sarah, I'm so glad you decided to visit our offices. I think you'll be impressed by what we can offer, He led me through a tour designed to showcase TechVantage's resources and success. Floors of developers working on major projects, conference rooms filled with executives planning acquisitions, walls covered with awards and recognition plaques. But what struck me most was the absence of any visible diversity. In a company employing over 300 people, I saw perhaps 6 individuals who appeared to be minorities, and not a single person with any obvious disability. "Impressive operation," I said as we settled into Brooks' corner office. "We like to think so. Now, have you given more thought to our offer?" "I have, and I'm flattered by your interest. But I have a few questions about TechVantage's business practices before I make my final decision." I pulled out a folder containing some of Marcus Williams' documentation, carefully selected to avoid anything that would violate his settlement agreement. "I've been researching your company's track record, and I noticed some concerning patterns. Regional Manufacturing, Cascade Industries, Pacific Solutions, all companies that hired TechVantage for major projects and ended up with non-functional systems." Brooks' expression hardened slightly. "Every consulting engagement has its challenges. We can't be responsible for client companies that lack the technical sophistication to implement our solutions properly." Interesting perspective. But I've actually been working with these companies to repair the systems TechVantage delivered, and the problems seem to stem from fundamental flaws in the original architecture. Now Brooks looked genuinely alarmed. "You've been interfering with our client relationships?" "I've been helping companies that were left with broken systems after TechVantage collected their fees and disappeared. It's called customer service. You might want to look into it." The mask of professional courtesy finally slipped completely. Brooks leaned forward with undisguised hostility. "Ms. Chen, I think you're making a serious mistake. TechVantage has significant resources and influence in this industry. Companies that compete against us directly tend to find business becoming very difficult." "Is that a threat, Mr. Brooks?" "It's a reality check. Morrison Industries is a small player in a big market. It would be unfortunate if your stubbornness caused problems for your colleagues." I smiled and closed my folder. "Nathan, I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to have to decline. Morrison Industries suits me just fine." "You're making a career-limiting decision." "Maybe. But at least I'll be able to sleep at night." As I wheeled toward the door, Brooks called after me. "This isn't over, Sarah. TechVantage doesn't forget companies that interfere with our business." "I'm counting on it," I replied without turning around. The elevator ride down to the lobby felt like descending from a predator's lair, back to civilization. But I knew that rejecting Brooks' offer was only the beginning of a much larger conflict. TechVantage had revealed their true nature, and now I had to prepare Morrison Industries for whatever retaliation they might attempt. The war for Morrison's survival was about to begin, and I intended to make sure we were ready for whatever TechVantage could throw at us. The retaliation began exactly 72 hours after my meeting with Nathan Brooks. I arrived at Morrison Industries on Monday morning to find our entire network under cyber attack. The intrusion was sophisticated, targeting our development servers and attempting to access our proprietary code repositories. Our IT security team was scrambling to contain the breach, while I worked with them to identify the attack vectors. "This isn't random," I told Jennifer Walsh as we monitored the attempted infiltration. "Someone with intimate knowledge of our system's architecture is guiding this attack." The hackers were specifically targeting the Peterson Group integration system and my predictive inventory algorithms, exactly the technologies that TechVantage had shown the most interest in acquiring. While Jennifer coordinated our cyber defense, I was already implementing countermeasures I'd prepared weeks earlier. The redundant backup systems I'd created were isolated from our main network, and the most sensitive code was encrypted with algorithms I'd developed personally. But the cyber attack was just the opening move. That afternoon, President Hawthorne received a call from Peterson Group's procurement director, James Mitchell, informing him that TechVantage Solutions had submitted an unsolicited proposal to replace Morrison's system with their own solution at 60% of our current contract value. "They're claiming they can deliver superior functionality with faster implementation times," Hawthorne told me in an emergency meeting. Mitchell says Peterson Group is obligated to consider any proposal that could save them money. What's their timeline for making a decision? 2 weeks. They want both companies to present comprehensive proposals, including live demonstrations of our respective capabilities. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. TechVantage had clearly done their homework, timing their attack to coincide with Peterson Group's annual budget review cycle. They knew exactly when our client would be most susceptible to a cost-saving proposal. Richard, we need to understand that this isn't just about the Peterson Group. If TechVantage succeeds in stealing this contract, they'll use the same playbook against our other clients. They're trying to systematically destroy Morrison's technology division. Over the next few days, TechVantage's assault intensified on multiple fronts. 3 of our junior developers received job offers from TechVantage, with salary increases of 40 to 50%. While none of them accepted immediately, the offers were clearly designed to create uncertainty and potentially extract insider information about our development processes. More troubling were the rumors that began circulating in industry forums. Anonymous posts questioned Morrison Industries' technical capabilities, suggesting that our recent successes were due to luck rather than genuine innovation. The posts were subtle enough to seem like legitimate professional discussions, but they followed patterns that suggested a coordinated disinformation campaign. The most brazen attack came on Thursday morning, when Regional Manufacturing's Dr. Patricia Kim called me in a panic. "Sarah, I just received a letter from TechVantage's legal department claiming that the modifications you made to our system violate their intellectual property rights. They're threatening to sue both Regional Manufacturing and Morrison Industries for technology theft." The legal threat was clearly frivolous. The work I'd done for Regional Manufacturing was based entirely on my own algorithms and involved fixing problems in TechVantage's original implementation. But defending against even a baseless lawsuit would be expensive and time-consuming. I spent that evening analyzing TechVantage's strategy, trying to understand their ultimate objective. The cyber attacks, employee poaching, disinformation campaign, and legal threats were all components of a coordinated effort to overwhelm Morrison's resources and destabilize our business relationships. But there was something else. The attacks were too personal, too specifically targeted at my work. Nathan Brooks wasn't just trying to eliminate a competitor. He was trying to prove that I had been a mistake, that Morrison's faith in my abilities was misplaced. This realization crystallized my response strategy. The next morning, I called a meeting with my entire development team. These 8 programmers had worked closely with me for months, and they deserved to understand what Morrison Industries was facing. "I want to be completely transparent about our situation," I began. "TechVantage Solutions is trying to destroy our technology division using tactics that go well beyond normal business competition. They've attempted to hack our systems, they're spreading false information about our capabilities, and they're threatening frivolous lawsuits against our clients." My team exchanged worried glances. Alex Rodriguez, one of my senior developers, spoke first. "Sarah, 3 of us have received job offers from TechVantage. We turned them down because we believe in what we're building here, but their recruiter made it sound like Morrison Industries might not survive the competition." "That's exactly what they want you to think. TechVantage's entire business model is based on eliminating competitors through intimidation rather than building better technology." I pulled up a presentation I'd prepared, showing side-by-side comparisons between TechVantage's solutions and the systems we'd developed at Morrison. Look at the actual technical specifications. Their inventory management system uses 15-year-old algorithms that can't adapt to real-time market changes. Their user interfaces require extensive training because they're not intuitive. Their integration capabilities are limited because they use proprietary protocols that don't play well with other systems. "Then why are they so successful?" asked Maria Santos, our newest team member. "Because they're excellent at marketing, and they have resources to outspend smaller competitors. But we have something they can't buy: genuine innovation and the ability to create solutions that actually solve our clients' problems." I outlined my plan for defending Morrison Industries against TechVantage's assault. We would focus on demonstrating our technological superiority through concrete results, rather than trying to match their marketing budget or legal resources. We're going to turn Peterson Group's competitive evaluation into a showcase for everything that makes our approach better than TechVantage. The centerpiece of my strategy was a comprehensive upgrade to the Peterson Group system that would demonstrate capabilities TechVantage couldn't match. I'd been developing these enhancements in my spare time, but now they would become our primary weapon in the battle for Morrison's survival. The new features included predictive maintenance algorithms that could identify potential equipment failures weeks before they occurred, dynamic supply chain optimization that could automatically adjust ordering patterns based on seasonal trends and market fluctuations, and an integrated customer relationship management system that provided real-time insights into client satisfaction and loyalty patterns. But the most innovative component was something I called adaptive intelligence, a machine learning system that continuously improved its performance by analyzing the outcomes of its own predictions and recommendations. Working 18-hour days, my team and I implemented these upgrades while simultaneously defending against TechVantage's ongoing attacks. The cyber intrusions continued daily, requiring constant vigilance to protect our systems. The legal threats escalated, with TechVantage filing preliminary injunctions against 3 of our client companies. Meanwhile, I was coordinating with the network of companies I'd been helping to resist TechVantage's predatory practices. Regional Manufacturing, Cascade Industries, and Pacific Solutions had agreed to serve as character witnesses, providing documented evidence of TechVantage's poor service delivery and questionable business practices. Marcus Williams proved invaluable in this effort, using his insider knowledge to anticipate TechVantage's tactics and provide strategic advice on countering their moves. "Brooks is getting desperate," Marcus told me during one of our weekly strategy calls. "I've heard through my contacts that TechVantage's board is putting pressure on him to deliver results. If he loses the Peterson Group contract after making such a big public commitment, his position at the company could be in jeopardy." This information suggested that we were having more impact than I'd realized. TechVantage's aggressive tactics weren't just about eliminating competition. They were about Brooks saving his own career. The psychological pressure was intense. Every day brought new challenges, new attacks on Morrison's reputation and resources. Several of our smaller clients began expressing concerns about continuing their contracts with a company that was embroiled in such public controversy. But there were also signs of hope. The technology journalists I'd been working with were beginning to publish investigative articles about TechVantage's business practices. The legal challenges against our client companies were being dismissed as frivolous by judges who recognized the tactics for what they were. Most importantly, my team remained united and committed to proving that innovation could triumph over intimidation. The Peterson Group evaluation was scheduled for a Wednesday afternoon in their corporate headquarters in Portland. Both Morrison Industries and TechVantage would have 2 hours to present their solutions, followed by a live demonstration and technical Q&A session. I spent the weekend before the presentation rehearsing every aspect of our demonstration, anticipating potential technical problems, and preparing responses to the criticisms I expected TechVantage to raise about our approach. On Tuesday evening, I received an unexpected call from Dr. Amanda Rodriguez, Peterson Group's technical director. "Sarah, I wanted to give you a heads up about tomorrow's presentation. TechVantage has been making some serious accusations about Morrison Industries' technical capabilities. They've suggested that your recent successes were based on stolen intellectual property. Dr. Rodriguez, those accusations are completely false. We've documented every aspect of our development process, and we're prepared to provide complete technical specifications that prove the originality of our work. I believe you, but you should know that Nathan Brooks has been very persuasive in his private conversations with our executive team. He's convinced some people that TechVantage's resources and experience make them a safer choice for Peterson Group's long-term technology needs." After ending the call, I realized that the formal presentation would only be part of the battle. TechVantage had been working behind the scenes to undermine confidence in Morrison Industries, and I would need to address those concerns directly. That night, I made a decision that would have seemed impossible 6 months earlier. Instead of focusing solely on the technical demonstration, I would tell Peterson Group's executives the complete story of TechVantage's predatory practices and my personal experience with their discriminatory attitudes. It was a risky strategy. Bringing up disability discrimination and unethical business practices could backfire if Peterson Group's executives viewed it as an inappropriate personal attack rather than relevant business information. But I had reached a point where I was tired of fighting this battle on TechVantage's terms. They had made it personal from the beginning, treating me as less capable because of my disability and assuming they could intimidate Morrison Industries into submission. The morning of the presentation, I drove to Portland with President Hawthorne and Jennifer Walsh, carrying a laptop bag filled with the most comprehensive technical demonstration I'd ever prepared. Peterson Group's headquarters was a modern complex in the Pearl District, designed to showcase the company's commitment to innovation and forward-thinking business practices. As we entered the main conference room, I noticed that TechVantage's team had arrived early and was already setting up their presentation equipment. Nathan Brooks looked confident and relaxed, clearly expecting an easy victory. He nodded politely when he saw me, but I caught the smug expression that flickered across his face when he thought I wasn't looking. Dr. Rodriguez introduced the agenda and ground rules for the evaluation. Each company would have 2 hours to present their solution, followed by 30 minutes of technical questions and a live demonstration of key capabilities. TechVantage presented first, and I had to admit their presentation was professionally polished. Brooks and his team had clearly invested significant resources in creating impressive visuals and compelling narrative about TechVantage's experience and capabilities. But as I listened to their technical specifications, I noticed the same fundamental limitations I'd identified in my research. Their solution was sophisticated but inflexible, powerful but difficult to customize, comprehensive but not particularly innovative. When it was Morrison's turn to present, I began with something TechVantage wouldn't expect: complete transparency about the competitive dynamics that had brought us to this moment. Before I demonstrate our technical capabilities, I want to address some concerns that have been raised about Morrison Industries and our approach to this project. I looked directly at Nathan Brooks as I continued. Over the past month, Morrison Industries has been the target of a coordinated campaign designed to undermine our reputation and our client relationships. This campaign has included cyber attacks on our systems, attempts to poach our employees, frivolous legal threats against our clients, and a disinformation effort questioning our technical capabilities. The Peterson Group executives looked surprised and uncomfortable. This wasn't the kind of presentation they'd expected in a formal business evaluation. I'm sharing this information because it demonstrates something important about the difference between Morrison Industries and TechVantage Solutions. When faced with competition, we respond by improving our technology and better serving our clients. Our competitors respond by trying to eliminate the competition through intimidation. Brooks started to object, but Dr. Rodriguez gestured for him to remain silent. Now let me show you what genuine innovation looks like when it's driven by a commitment to solving problems rather than eliminating competitors. The technical demonstration that followed was the most satisfying moment of my professional career. Every feature worked flawlessly. Every algorithm performed better than projected, and every enhancement delivered measurable improvements over the existing system. But the real triumph came during the Q&A session, when Dr. Rodriguez asked about long-term scalability and customization options. Dr. Rodriguez, our system is designed to evolve with your business needs. Let me show you the adaptive intelligence component that learns from your operations and continuously optimizes its own performance. I demonstrated how the system could analyze historical data to predict future trends, automatically adjust parameters based on changing conditions, and provide recommendations that improved over time as it learned from the outcomes of its suggestions. It was technology that TechVantage simply couldn't match, because it required the kind of innovative thinking that came from genuinely understanding client needs rather than just trying to capture market share. When the presentations concluded, Peterson Group's executive team huddled for their private deliberation, while both companies waited in separate conference rooms. 30 minutes later, Dr. Rodriguez returned with their decision. After careful consideration of both proposals, Peterson Group has decided to not only continue our contract with Morrison Industries, but to expand it to include the advanced features demonstrated today. Morrison's solution clearly provides superior functionality, better long-term value, and a level of innovation that we believe will give us significant competitive advantages. The victory was even sweeter because of how hard TechVantage had fought to prevent it. Brooks looked stunned, clearly unable to process how his overwhelming resource advantage had been overcome by what he considered a small, insignificant competitor. But as we prepared to leave Peterson Group's offices, I knew that this battle was only the beginning of a larger war. TechVantage had invested too much in their assault on Morrison Industries to simply accept defeat and move on. The real test of whether innovation could triumph over intimidation was still ahead. The Peterson Group victory should have been the end of our troubles with TechVantage, but Nathan Brooks had other plans. What followed was the most intense month of corporate warfare I'd ever experienced, and it would ultimately change not just Morrison Industries, but the entire Pacific Northwest technology sector. The first sign that TechVantage wasn't finished came 3 days after the Peterson presentation. I was reviewing quarterly budget projections when Jennifer Walsh burst into my office, her face pale with concern. "Sarah, we have a serious problem. I just got off the phone with Data Secure Industries. They're terminating our server hosting contract effective immediately." Data Secure had been Morrison's IT infrastructure partner for over 5 years, providing cloud hosting services that were critical to our operations. Losing them would cripple our ability to serve clients and could potentially destroy months of development work. Did they give a reason for the termination? They cited, quote, security concerns related to recent cyber attacks on our systems. But Sarah, the language in their termination notice is almost identical to boilerplate text I've seen in TechVantage legal documents. It was a brilliant move. Rather than attacking Morrison directly, TechVantage was pressuring our vendors and service providers to abandon us. They were using their influence and resources to strangle our operations while maintaining plausible deniability. Within hours, the attacks expanded. Our office supply company suddenly required cash payments in advance. Our legal firm received an anonymous tip questioning Morrison's financial stability. Even our building's property management company began raising concerns about lease violations that had never been issues before. "They're trying to isolate us," I explained to President Hawthorne during an emergency executive meeting. "If they can't compete with our technology, they're going to make it impossible for us to operate a business. How do we fight this? We can't force companies to work with us if they're being pressured to drop our contracts. We don't fight it defensively, we go on the offensive." That evening, I called Marcus Williams with a proposal that would either destroy TechVantage's reputation or put Morrison Industries out of business. "Marcus, how would you feel about going public with your experiences at TechVantage? Full disclosure, documented evidence, on-the-record interview with major media outlets." There was a long pause before Marcus responded. "Sarah, my settlement agreement has a clause that could cost me $500,000 if I violate the non-disclosure provisions. What if I told you we might be able to get that settlement agreement invalidated?" I had been working with our legal team to research TechVantage's settlement practices, and we'd discovered something interesting. Marcus's non-disclosure agreement contained provisions that were likely unenforceable under Washington state's new whistleblower protection laws. More importantly, TechVantage's ongoing attacks on Morrison Industries could be interpreted as a violation of their own settlement terms, which included clauses about not engaging in retaliatory behavior against former employees who cooperated with discrimination investigations. "If you're willing to take the risk, I think we can not only protect you from their legal threats, but potentially expose a pattern of illegal behavior that goes far beyond what happened to either of us." Marcus agreed to meet the following evening at a secure location to discuss the details. What he brought to that meeting was explosive. Over his 18 months at TechVantage, Marcus had documented not just his own mistreatment, but evidence of systematic discrimination against multiple protected classes. The company had a pattern of hiring disabled employees, veterans, and older workers to meet federal diversity requirements, then creating hostile work environments that forced them to quit or accept termination settlements with restrictive non-disclosure agreements. "There are at least 12 other people like me," Marcus explained, spreading documents across the conference table we'd reserved at a downtown hotel. "All hired for diversity compliance, all pushed out within 2 years, all silenced by NDAs that threaten financial ruin if they speak up." The documentation was damning. Internal emails discussed managing diversity hires and minimizing long-term liability from accommodation requirements. Performance reviews showed clear patterns of unfair evaluation criteria applied selectively to disabled employees. Most shocking were recorded conversations where TechVantage executives explicitly discussed using legal intimidation to silence former employees. "Marcus, this isn't just employment discrimination. This is organized fraud designed to circumvent federal civil rights laws." We spent the next week building an airtight case against TechVantage's practices. I reached out to investigative journalists at the Seattle Times, TechCrunch, and several national publications, providing them with anonymized documentation, while Marcus worked with our legal team to challenge his settlement agreement. But TechVantage's pressure campaign against Morrison Industries was intensifying. We lost 2 more vendor contracts, and rumors were circulating that major clients were reconsidering their relationships with us. The breaking point came when I received a call from Dr. Patricia Kim at Regional Manufacturing. "Sarah, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to suspend our consulting agreement with Morrison Industries. TechVantage has filed a federal lawsuit claiming that the work you did on our systems violates multiple patents. Our insurance company is requiring us to cut ties with any parties involved in the litigation." The patent lawsuit was clearly frivolous, but it would take months to resolve and cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees. Worse, it would create a precedent that TechVantage could use to threaten any company that worked with Morrison Industries. That night, I made a decision that terrified and exhilarated me in equal measure. I was going to challenge Nathan Brooks to a public debate about the future of technology innovation, to be held at the annual Pacific Northwest Technology Summit the following week. The Technology Summit was the region's premier industry conference, attended by hundreds of executives, investors, and journalists. It would be the perfect venue to expose TechVantage's practices while demonstrating Morrison's technological superiority. I sent Brooks a formal challenge via email, copying several major industry publications and the conference organizers. "Mr. Brooks, given TechVantage's repeated claims about technological superiority and industry leadership, I propose a public discussion about innovation, competition, and business ethics in the Pacific Northwest technology sector. Morrison Industries is prepared to defend our approaches and achievements in an open forum where the industry can evaluate our respective contributions to technological progress." The email was carefully worded to make it almost impossible for Brooks to refuse without appearing weak or evasive. By framing it as a discussion about industry leadership rather than a personal confrontation, I gave him room to accept while building pressure for public accountability. Brooks responded within 2 hours, accepting the challenge with obvious confidence. "Ms. Chen, TechVantage Solutions would be happy to participate in an educational discussion about the realities of technology innovation and the importance of established expertise in developing enterprise solutions." The Technology Summit organizers were thrilled to add such a high-profile debate to their program, especially given the recent industry buzz about the conflict between our companies. They scheduled us for the main stage during the conference's closing session, guaranteeing maximum attendance and media coverage. I spent the next week preparing for what I knew would be the most important presentation of my career. This wasn't just about defending Morrison Industries or my personal reputation. It was about proving that innovation and integrity could triumph over resources and ruthless tactics. The key to my strategy was demonstrating concrete value, rather than just making abstract arguments. I prepared live demonstrations of Morrison's technology that would showcase capabilities TechVantage couldn't match, along with documented case studies showing the real-world impact of our solutions. But I also prepared something else, a comprehensive presentation of the evidence Marcus Williams and I had gathered about TechVantage's discriminatory practices and predatory business tactics. The morning of the debate, I arrived at the Seattle Convention Center early to set up my demonstration equipment and run through final technical checks. The main auditorium was already filling with technology executives, investors, journalists, and other industry professionals who had come to witness what many were calling the most significant confrontation in the Pacific Northwest tech sector in years. Nathan Brooks arrived with a team of 5 TechVantage executives, all wearing matching Navy suits and carrying themselves with the confident demeanor of people accustomed to winning through superior resources. They had clearly invested significant preparation time in this presentation, viewing it as an opportunity to publicly humiliate Morrison Industries and establish TechVantage's dominance in the regional market. The debate format was structured as a moderated discussion, with each side having 20 minutes for opening presentations, followed by 30 minutes of moderated Q&A, and concluding with 10-minute closing statements. Brooks presented first, delivering a polished talk about TechVantage's experience, resources, and track record of success. He emphasized the company's ability to handle large-scale projects, their relationships with major corporations, and their financial stability in an uncertain market. "Innovation requires more than good ideas," Brooks concluded. "It requires the resources, experience, and institutional knowledge to turn concepts into reliable solutions that enterprise clients can depend on for their most critical business operations." When my turn came, I began with a simple statement that immediately shifted the tone of the discussion. Mr. Brooks is absolutely right that innovation requires more than good ideas. It requires integrity, respect for intellectual property, fair treatment of employees, and honest dealing with clients. Unfortunately, TechVantage Solutions has demonstrated none of these qualities. I proceeded to methodically dismantle TechVantage's claims about technological superiority, using side-by-side comparisons that showed Morrison's solutions outperforming theirs in every measurable category. I demonstrated our adaptive intelligence system live, showing how it could solve problems in real time that TechVantage's static algorithms couldn't even recognize. But the most powerful moment came when I addressed TechVantage's business practices directly. The technology industry has a responsibility to create opportunities for all talented individuals, regardless of their background or physical capabilities. TechVantage Solutions has systematically violated this principle, hiring disabled employees to meet federal compliance requirements and then creating hostile work environments designed to force them out. The auditorium fell silent as I presented evidence of TechVantage's discriminatory practices, including audio recordings of executives discussing how to manage out disabled employees and documented patterns of unfair treatment spanning multiple years. Brooks looked stunned, clearly unprepared for such a direct attack on his company's reputation. When the moderator gave him a chance to respond, his composure finally cracked. These are baseless accusations from disgruntled former employees who are trying to extort money from a successful company. TechVantage Solutions has always complied with all employment laws and diversity requirements. Mr. Brooks, are you claiming that Marcus Williams, Jennifer Park, David Thompson, and 8 other former TechVantage employees all fabricated similar stories about discrimination and retaliation? Are you suggesting that documented emails from your executives discussing diversity management strategies are forgeries? The questions came from Dr. Amanda Rodriguez, who had flown up from Portland specifically to attend the debate. Her presence in the audience added credibility to my presentation, since she had witnessed TechVantage's aggressive tactics firsthand during the Peterson Group evaluation. During the Q&A session, other audience members began sharing their own experiences with TechVantage's business practices. Representatives from 3 different companies described situations where TechVantage had overpromised, underdelivered, and then used legal intimidation to avoid accountability for poor results. By the time we reached closing statements, it was clear that the debate had become something larger than a competition between 2 companies. It had evolved into a public reckoning with predatory business practices that had affected the entire regional technology ecosystem. In my closing statement, I made an offer that I knew would either establish Morrison Industries as a true industry leader or destroy us completely. The technology industry succeeds when innovation is rewarded and ethical behavior is the standard for business relationships. Morrison Industries is prepared to lead by example. We're announcing the creation of the Pacific Northwest Technology Ethics Initiative, a consortium of companies committed to fair competition, employee protection, and transparent business practices. I outlined a comprehensive program that would include independent auditing of employment practices, standardized ethical guidelines for technology consulting, and a collaborative approach to innovation that would benefit the entire regional economy rather than just individual companies. We invite any company that shares these values to join us in creating a technology sector that prioritizes innovation and integrity over intimidation and market manipulation. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Before I had finished speaking, representatives from 6 different companies were already approaching the stage to express interest in joining the initiative. But the most satisfying moment came after the formal session ended, when Nathan Brooks approached me privately. "Ms. Chen, I think we may have gotten off on the wrong foot. Perhaps TechVantage and Morrison Industries could find ways to collaborate rather than compete." I looked at him for a long moment, remembering all the condescension, threats, and attempts to destroy everything I had built. "Mr. Brooks, 6 months ago you told me that Morrison Industries was too small to matter in this market. Today you're suggesting collaboration. What changed?" He smiled uncomfortably. "The market is evolving, TechVantage believes in adapting to new realities. The reality is that your company's business model is based on eliminating competition rather than building better technology. That approach might have worked in the past, but the industry is moving toward accountability and transparency. Are you rejecting our offer to work together? I'm suggesting that TechVantage needs to fundamentally change its approach to business relationships before any ethical company would consider collaboration. Brooks's expression hardened, revealing a glimpse of the hostile executive who had threatened Morrison Industries just weeks earlier. This isn't over, Sarah. TechVantage has resources and influence that go far beyond what you've seen so far. I'm counting on it, I replied, echoing the same words I'd used when leaving his office after rejecting his job offer. As Brooks walked away, I realized that the public confrontation had changed the dynamics of our conflict completely. TechVantage could no longer attack Morrison Industries in the shadows, using underhanded tactics while maintaining plausible deniability. Their reputation was now tied to their behavior, and the entire industry would be watching how they responded to the challenge of ethical competition. The Pacific Northwest Technology Ethics Initiative gained momentum throughout the following week, with 23 companies signing on as founding members. Major technology publications ran feature articles about the need for industry accountability, using TechVantage's practices as a cautionary example of how competitive success could come at the cost of ethical integrity. But I knew that Nathan Brooks wasn't finished with his attempts to destroy Morrison Industries. The public humiliation at the technology summit had made the conflict personal for him, and desperate executives with unlimited resources could be extremely dangerous. The final phase of our corporate war was about to begin, and I suspected it would determine not just the survival of Morrison Industries, but the future direction of the entire regional technology sector. The end came not with corporate warfare, but with a simple phone call that changed everything. 2 weeks after the technology summit, I was working late at Morrison Industries when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Nathan Brooks, and for a moment I considered letting it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Sarah. His voice was different. Tired, defeated, lacking the predatory confidence I'd grown accustomed to. I need to speak with you. In person? Tonight. Nathan, if this is another threat or manipulation tactic, I'm not interested. It's not. Please, 1 hour of your time, I'll come to Morrison's offices. Against my better judgment, I agreed. An hour later, Nathan Brooks walked into our lobby, looking like a man who had aged years in the span of weeks. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his confident demeanor replaced by something that looked almost like desperation. TechVantage is finished, he said without preamble as he sat across from me in the conference room. The board voted this morning to dissolve the company's operations in the Pacific Northwest. I've been terminated, effective immediately. I studied his face, looking for signs of deception or manipulation. What happened? What happened is that you were right about everything. The ethics initiative you started triggered investigations that we couldn't survive. The Department of Labor, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the Federal Trade Commission, they all found evidence of systematic violations spanning 5 years. Brooks pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. These are the settlement agreements TechVantage has been forced to accept. $12 million in penalties, restitution to 47 former employees, and a consent decree that essentially prohibits us from operating consulting services in this region. I opened the folder and scanned the documents. The scope of TechVantage's violations was even broader than Marcus Williams and I had suspected. Employment discrimination, fraudulent billing practices, intellectual property theft, anti-competitive market manipulation. The company had violated virtually every principle of ethical business conduct. But that's not why I'm here, Brooks continued. I'm here because 3 months ago, TechVantage received an acquisition offer that could have saved the company. The buyer was willing to pay $200 million for our client contracts and technology portfolio. Why didn't you accept it? Brooks laughed bitterly. Because I was so focused on destroying Morrison Industries that I convinced the board to reject the offer. I told them we could eliminate our regional competition and build a monopoly worth twice as much. The irony was staggering. While Brooks had been orchestrating attacks against Morrison Industries, he had passed up an opportunity that could have resolved TechVantage's problems without destroying other companies. The buyer withdrew their offer last week, after your Technology Summit presentation made it clear that TechVantage's reputation was irreparably damaged. My obsession with beating you cost everyone at TechVantage their jobs. Nathan, why are you telling me this? He was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. Because I want you to understand something. When I first met you, I saw your wheelchair before I saw your capabilities. I made assumptions about what you could accomplish based on my prejudices rather than your actual skills. I noticed everything that happened afterward. The attacks, the intimidation, the corporate warfare. It all started because I couldn't accept that someone I had dismissed as irrelevant was actually more innovative than anything my company could produce. Brooks looked up, meeting my eyes directly for the first time in our conversation. You didn't just beat TechVantage in the marketplace. You proved that innovation and integrity are more powerful than resources and ruthless tactics. And in the process, you forced me to confront my own biases in a way that was uncomfortable. What will you do now? I don't know. My reputation in the technology industry is destroyed. Most of the executives who worked for me will probably never find comparable positions. The ripple effects of my decisions will impact hundreds of families. There was something in his voice that made me believe this wasn't another manipulation attempt. Nathan Brooks had been genuinely humbled by the consequences of his actions. Nathan, can I ask you something? That morning in the break room, when Derek and Lisa and Brad were discussing the Peterson Group crisis, did you know they were dismissing my ideas? Yes. I had been monitoring Morrison's internal communications as part of our competitive intelligence efforts. I knew you had developed solutions that could address Peterson Group's requirements. And you still tried to steal the contract through underbidding, rather than developing better technology? Because I thought superior resources and market manipulation would always triumph over innovation. I was wrong about that too. We sat in silence for several minutes, both processing the implications of everything that had transpired over the past months. Finally, Brooks stood up to leave. Sarah, I know this doesn't change anything. But I want you to know that I'm genuinely sorry for my actions and their consequences. You deserved better treatment from the beginning, and your success was earned through talent and hard work, not luck or circumstances. After he left, I remained in the conference room, thinking about the strange journey that had brought us to this point. 9 months earlier, I had been an overlooked software engineer whose ideas were dismissed by colleagues who saw my disability before my capabilities. Now I was leading an industry initiative that was reshaping business practices across the Pacific Northwest technology sector. The following morning, I called a meeting with my entire team to share the news about TechVantage's collapse and discuss the implications for Morrison Industries. This changes everything for us, I explained to the group gathered in our main conference room. TechVantage's client contracts are being distributed among several companies, and we're being offered first choice on 12 major accounts. Alex Rodriguez raised his hand. Sarah, that's incredible growth potential, but do we have the capacity to handle that much new business? Not with our current structure. We'll need to expand significantly. New developers, additional support staff, possibly satellite offices in Portland and Vancouver. Maria Santos looked concerned. Are we going to turn into the kind of company we've been fighting against? Growing so fast that we lose focus on innovation and ethical practices? It was exactly the right question, and one I'd been struggling with since receiving the acquisition offers. We're going to establish principles that prevent that from happening. The Pacific Northwest Technology Ethics Initiative isn't just about external relationships. It's about maintaining our own standards as we grow. Over the next hour, we developed a comprehensive plan for sustainable expansion that would preserve Morrison's innovative culture while building the infrastructure necessary to serve larger clients. But the most important decision we made was about giving back to the community that had supported us. Wasihili, I want to propose something, I said as the meeting was winding down. We've succeeded because people took chances on our ideas and supported us when we were fighting unfair competition. I think we have an obligation to create opportunities for others who might face similar challenges. I outlined a proposal for the Morrison Foundation, a nonprofit organization that would provide technology training and entrepreneurship support specifically for individuals with disabilities, veterans, and other underrepresented groups in the technology sector. We'll fund it through a percentage of our contract revenues, and we'll provide mentorship, resources, and advocacy for people who are trying to break into an industry that doesn't always recognize their potential. The response from my team was unanimously enthusiastic. Within 3 months, the Morrison Foundation had launched its first training program, partnering with local disability advocacy organizations and veterans groups to provide comprehensive technology education. 6 months later, I found myself back in the elevator of Meridian Tower, heading to the 42nd floor for a very different kind of meeting. The companies that had formed the Pacific Northwest Technology Ethics Initiative were gathering to formalize their collaboration and establish permanent standards for the regional industry. As the elevator doors opened, I was greeted by Dr. Amanda Rodriguez from Peterson Group, who had become one of the initiative's strongest advocates. "Sarah, I wanted to thank you personally for everything you've accomplished. The Ethics Initiative has changed how our entire industry approaches business relationships." The conference room that had once hosted TechVantage's attempts to steal Morrison's contracts was now filled with executives committed to fair competition and collaborative innovation. Representatives from 29 companies had gathered to sign agreements establishing the first industry-wide ethical standards in the Pacific Northwest technology sector. During my presentation to the group, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this moment. 9 months ago, I was told that my ideas weren't suitable for important projects, that someone like me should focus on work more appropriate for my capabilities. Today, the technologies we developed at Morrison Industries are being used by companies throughout the region, and the ethical standards we established are becoming models for other technology sectors. I looked around the room at the faces of executives who had once been skeptical of Morrison Industries' capabilities and my own leadership potential. But the most important lesson I've learned is that innovation isn't just about developing better technology. It's about creating environments where all talented individuals can contribute their best work, regardless of their background or circumstances. The applause that followed felt different from the polite recognition I'd received at previous industry events. It was genuine appreciation from peers who had come to respect not just Morrison's technological achievements, but our commitment to changing how the industry operated. After the formal signing ceremony, Derek Martinez approached me with an expression of obvious nervousness. "Sarah, I've been wanting to apologize for a long time. The way I treated you in those early months was inexcusable. I let my assumptions about your disability blind me to your capabilities, and I'm sorry." "Derek, I appreciate the apology. What matters now is what we do going forward. Actually, I have a proposal about that. My current company is looking for a technology consulting partner for a major project. Would Morrison Industries be interested in discussing a collaboration?" It was a remarkable moment. The same person who had once suggested I stick to data entry was now seeking Morrison Industries as an equal partner for his most important client. That evening, as I was cleaning out my desk to move to Morrison's new headquarters building, I found the folder containing my original Peterson Group proposal, the system I had developed in secret while being dismissed and underestimated by my colleagues. Looking at those early designs, I realized how much had changed in less than a year. The technologies had evolved far beyond my initial vision. The company had grown from a small manufacturing firm to a regional industry leader, and I had transformed from an overlooked employee to someone whose ideas were reshaping an entire business sector. But perhaps most importantly, the attitudes and assumptions that had made my early struggles necessary were beginning to change throughout the industry. The Pacific Northwest Technology Ethics Initiative had grown to include over 60 companies. The Morrison Foundation had graduated its first class of technology entrepreneurs, and 3 other regions were developing similar programs based on our model. Marcus Williams called as I was packing my final box of personal items. "Sarah, I wanted you to know that I just accepted a position as Director of Inclusive Technology at Regional Manufacturing. They created the role specifically to ensure that their development teams include diverse perspectives and accessible design principles." "Marcus, that's wonderful. You deserve recognition for your expertise, not just your role in exposing TechVantage's practices. None of this would have happened without your courage to challenge the industry's acceptance of discriminatory behavior. You didn't just change Morrison Industries, you changed how all of us think about innovation and inclusion." As I wheeled out of Morrison's original offices for the last time, I thought about the long journey from that morning in the break room, when my colleagues had dismissed my ideas as unsuitable, to this moment, when those same ideas had transformed not just a company, but an entire industry. The people who had once mocked my disability were now working for companies that followed ethical standards I had helped establish. The colleagues who had underestimated my capabilities were now seeking partnerships with the company I had helped build. But most satisfying of all was knowing that the changes we had created would open doors for others, who might face similar challenges in the future. Innovation, I had learned, wasn't just about solving technical problems. It was about solving human problems, creating opportunities, and building systems that recognize the potential in everyone, regardless of their circumstances. And that was a legacy worth fighting for. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.